Hey, noswaith bawb. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Get on the Farming Ladder webinar this evening, talking all about the Venture Programme. I'm joined here with a panel of speakers. We're trying things a little bit different tonight, so rather than having different presentations, we're going to have a panel discussion. So feel free to submit your questions through the Q&A function if you're listening through Zoom, and of course if you're listening over Facebook Live, you can comment below with your questions. So my name's Einir Davies and I am the Venture Programme Manager working for Mentro Business, and we deliver Farming Connect, as I'm sure you're aware. And I'm joined tonight with a panel, a really great panel. I'm really looking forward to discussing with you. So we've got Dr. Llywelyn Jones, of course, the solicitor from Agri Advisor Solicitors. We've also got Rhys Williams, Peredur Owen and Emyr Owen. All three of them are involved in joint ventures, and we're going to have a discussion this evening around how they set up those joint ventures, pros and cons, and any tips they can share with you if you're considering looking at joint ventures yourself. So just to give you a bit of background on the Venture Programme, it's been running now for coming up to 5 years, and it's essentially a matching service for farmers. So we advertise opportunities on behalf of landowners, and then we match up profiles for the seekers and providers. And we offer a package of support, including mentoring, a number of different events. And of course, we have the advisory service, which will offer you business planning and some legal advice to set up or form your joint venture agreement. So without further ado, I think I'll invite our panelists to introduce themselves and maybe spend a couple of minutes just to explain your joint venture story, I suppose. So if Emyr, Rhys and Peredur go first, and then Nerys will finally introduce herself and maybe go into talking about some of the most common business models that she tends to see are quite appropriate for joint ventures. So Emyr, ti eisiau cyflwyno dy hun if you want to introduce yourself first for us?
Yeah, diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much for opportunity to be here tonight. Yeah, I'm Emyr Owen. I farm in North Wales. I'm involved in two separate businesses, partnerships and so have it. So on our home farm at Bachwch, we converted to a spring carving dairy unit 2 years ago. That was done with our neighbour. So basically it was two family farms with no real connection, just realizing the opportunity we could grow our businesses by working together and working in partnership by forming a joint venture. That came as a sort of response to me having a opportunity to manage a heifer rearing unit fairly nearby to my home in Pentro. That's done on a contract farming basis. That also started in 2017, I think it was 18. So in theory, yeah, I've got a couple of different things going on. I'm day-to-day in Pentro with the heifer rearing unit. Our neighbour Gwydion, he's basically in charge of day-to-day planning of the dairy farm at home. And so far, everything's going good.
Great, diolch Emyr. Peredur, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, diolch, thank you. Yeah, I'm Peredur Owen, originally from North Wales and currently share farming here in Llandovery in South Wales. We started in November 2018, and it was a big help for me to find a place like this, both with the help of the venture program and Dr. Neris as well. So we are a sheep and beef farm here, looking to try and expand both beef and sheep enterprises on the farm and maximising grass, hopefully. But the greatest help we've had is first of all, with the venture, is to find a suitable match, and then once you've found a suitable match, is the expertise that Dr. Neris can bring to formulate an agreement or a contract per se, which we didn't have a clue how on earth to go about it without the help of someone like Dr. Neris and other experts in their field. So yeah, that's what we're doing down here.
Gret, diolch yn fawr, Peredur. A wedyn Rhys, ti'n gallu cyflwyno dy hun? Could you introduce yourself?
So good evening. I'm Rhys Williams. I live on the Llyn Peninsula with a wife and 3 children on a sort of 60-hectare store sheep and heifer rearing grassland farm. I worked for 15 years as a lecturer in Glyndŵr College. Now I'm an agribusiness consultant with Precision Grazing Limited. For 4 years now, I've been involved in a 3-way sheep production joint venture with Harry Featherstone Hall and Einir Jones in Coed Coch in Abergele. We run 2,500 New Zealand Romney ewes under the brand name of Hawara Romney. So the way I got involved in the joint venture was being inspired really by the success of local dairy share farming ventures. A neighbour of mine was pretty well known in this sort of area, Darwin Finch. I asked if I could meet him, just discuss how the ventures work, and asked him to give me his view really on how a joint venture would work in a beef and sheep scenario. He was kind enough to meet up with me, gave me excellent advice and guidance. In a few weeks' time, he gave me a call asking if I'd be interested in meeting a friend of his, which was Harry Featherstone Hall, to discuss the possibility of a joint venture. Family and I were not prepared really to relocate to Abergele, being sort of an hour and a half away. But I didn't want to let this opportunity go really, so I had to think of an alternative. I knew of Einir, was a student of mine in Glyndŵr, and I knew he had all the skills really and the traits that I thought needed really for this type of venture, so I asked him to join us. Now Einir supplies all the labour for the system now, and he's the key person really that makes the system work. So I administrate. I'm only in Coed Coch sort of once a month, spend a day there once a month, and then Harry owns the land and provides the land, and so all 3 of us really are directors in the company, and we sort of jointly manage the venture. I've learned a lot of lessons over the sort of 3 or 4 years we've been involved now. Not least really the need for sort of business acumen. It's a business really, and that's what it is. You've got to think of it as a business and not a way of life. System need to be simple as possible, so that we can focus really on the key profit drivers. A few things are also interesting things I've learned really, and I've learned these sort of things really by reading books like the Doug Avery's Resilient Farmer, and it's so much truth in a lot of things that he's saying. Sort of greed is the greatest sin, and you need to have aligned goals as a partnership. It's very important. Also, you only lose if you don't learn really. I made a lot of mistakes throughout the 3 or 4 years I've been involved in the venture, but I've learned every time really. It's been a real learning curve. But most of all, biggest lesson really, the realization really that joint venture is all about the people, and it's the people that makes the system work. Just asking you about short goals. Short-term goals was to develop sort of a profitable, sustainable, and resilient sheep production enterprise, and we sort of 3-4 years in. It's been tough, but we're more or less there now. A long-term goals really is more to develop a business further really, and the way to do this, and the way I see it, is to help Einir, who's the shepherd, really to grow his equity and to grow his skills, and allow him to take more of my responsibility on, more of my administration and business responsibilities, and that in turn then could release me then to turn my attention to other possible ventures. So yeah, so that's generally, and sorry, not very briefly, Einir, my introduction.
Rhys, thank you very much for sharing that with us. Some really valuable messages there. I can see a couple of questions have already come in, so keep them coming on either on the Zoom, if you're listening on Zoom through the Q&A, or of course you can comment on Facebook. So yeah, last but not least, certainly, Nerys, could you introduce yourself and, as I mentioned, go into maybe some of the most common business models that you tend to find work well for joint ventures? Diolch.
So Nerys Llewellyn-Jones, and I'm a solicitor at Einir Davies, and we specialise in agricultural matters and advising farmers. And we've done a lot of work with Venture since Venture was established a couple of years ago, in trying to support farmers who are looking to enter into these kind of joint ventures with people. I think one of the key things to begin with is that there is no kind of exact way to do this, and very often the best share farming enterprises that you come across, or joint ventures that you come across, are ones which have been created by the farmers themselves, isn't it? So they come to ourselves or the farm business consultant that we're working with as well, with a really good idea about how it would work for them, and as Rhys was saying, keeping it really simple, because that definitely makes a huge difference to the success of the business, and also the understanding in terms of the trust and mutual recognition of the people involved as well, and making sure that everybody is getting what they're looking to achieve from that business as well, in the short term as well as the longer term. So very often the agreements that we come up with, or the kind of the frameworks for the businesses that are being discussed, are very often bespoke to the actual kind of a business idea or direction that they look to put together. I think though, and as well, it's really important to reference the Farming Connect booklet that's available in Ystod Venture as well, which has got a wheel within it of all the different types of joint venture enterprises that you can enter into, isn't it? So that could be anything from contract for services through to full equity partnerships, or even a tenancy model as well, isn't it? So there's a whole spectrum of different ways of doing this as well. But I think the three main ones are probably, first of all, partnerships, whether that is the traditional partnership, as we are used to dealing with in terms of farming businesses, isn't it? Or a limited liability partnership, which has got a little bit more formality to it, but has the same kind of tax treatment as a normal partnership would have. And they're common because, one, they're very easy to create. So back to the simplicity point, isn't it? Very easy to create, but I think also it is a model which perhaps as farmers we're very used to, isn't it? In terms of farming family businesses, we're used to dealing with that model as a way of operating businesses, and because it's got that commonality, the different devices that we're used to dealing with within our farming enterprises are used to that model as well. So that's one model, and it's important to recognise that a partnership is also possible where you've got non-family partners in being involved, isn't it? It doesn't have to be that a partnership is only used where you've got family members involved, and certainly in Venture we've created partnerships whereby you've had non-family farming partners. I think the second one then is contract farming. So in a contract farming, you're not creating a new business for all intents and purposes. What you've got is a contractor business offering a particular service to another farming business, isn't it? So you're offering a particular type of service for a fee, and usually within that contract farming business there is, let's say, a bonus paid as well for carrying out those services to a particular standard, or to recognise a particular kind of input being put in by that contractor, and so there is no new business being created. It's two separate businesses agreeing to perform a particular farming enterprise, or to carry out a particular enterprise together. So that's a very popular model as well. And then the third, perhaps most popular model is share farming. So share farming, again, there's no new business being created. So you've still got two separate businesses, and usually one will be a landowning share farmer and the other will be a non-landowning share farmer. And they will agree by way, again, of a contract or an agreement to farm a particular holding or group of holdings together for the aim of whatever enterprises they've got on those holdings. So that model, is quite a popular one as well, isn't it? And there are different ways in which you make that happen in practice, in terms of whether you have a joint bank account or not, or whether you have separate accounts, etc. So there's lots of different ways that you could actually affect that in practice by creating the ability to share or pool resources, essentially, to enable that holding or a group of holdings to be farmed. So perhaps briefly, those are the three main types of farming models that can be utilised. But I think it's really important to stress that you should create the model that works for you. And you've already heard from Einir, Peredur and Rhys, who've got very different models here, which is really interesting, really, isn't it, in terms of different models being utilised to achieve the purpose of having a joint venture in place, isn't it? And I think that's really interesting, isn't it, to consider that there's lots of different ways that you can do this, and there's no right or wrong.
Absolutely, yeah, that's one of the key things that we try and convey really to anybody who's involved in venture, is that we try and encourage people not to go for sort of off-the-shelf agreements, and start the discussion really and use the advice that's available there really to tailor the agreement to what you need really from both parties. So diolch am hwnna, Nerys, that's really helpful. I didn't explain at the beginning, nes I ddim esbonio'n gywir ar y cychwyn o ran yr iaith heno. Dyn ni'n gor'o' cyflwyno yn Saesneg yn anffodus, gan ein bod ni'n darlledu yn fyw wrth gwrs ar Facebook. Felly oherwydd hynny, dydi ddim yn bosib i ni gael cyfieithydd ar y pryd. A serch hynny, mae gennym ni ddigwyddiad arall nos Iau, mae'r digwyddiad yna mynd i fod yn rhedeg yn yr iaith Gymraeg. Ond y prif neges genna I ydy, os ydych chi eisiau gofyn cwestiwn yn Gymraeg, mae croeso cynnes I chi wneud, Cymraeg neu Saesneg. So just a message there for those of you listening who would like to ask a question in Welsh, you're more than welcome to. We've had a couple of questions in already, so we might as well crack on with them, really. The first question is one that I had expected, to be honest. I'm not surprised at all to see this question here. Looking at sheep and beef joint ventures, is there enough profit margin for both parties? So that question, I think we're going to ask either Rhys or Peredur, really, because you're from you're involved in a beef and sheep joint venture. Rhys, do you want to have a go at answering that one for us?
Yeah. Diolch, Einir. Yes, we did. I expected that question as well, Einir. But it's the way this question's asked really is, it's half answered itself. Really, is that the key thing is that it has to be a profit in it. Really, no joint venture really, or a share farming venture will work really, except if there's nothing to share at the end really. So it's got to be. So the answer to that is it has to be, and it is possible. We know it's very challenging. And that's really why sort of dairy share farming ventures are been more popular and in essence therefore more successful, especially in New Zealand and in the UK really, because it's been over the last decade really it's been easier to show a margin really with the dairy. It's no secret really that beef and sheep farms businesses have been sort of heavily reliant on subsidies over recent years. So therefore, as I mentioned, really our goal really in Coed Coch is, my main goal really is for that business to be sustainable and resilient from a profitability point of view, really, to enable the joint venture to be to sustain. Otherwise, it won't. So yes, I don't know if that answers the question, but you know, the way to get sort of enough profit to share between both, well, it's just a business plan, isn't it? You know, you've got to make a business plan align really with getting a revenue to meet the needs of both parties. And if it doesn't, well, obviously it won't work. So really, it's all down to the business plan and the execution of that business plan, really. Yeah. Okay.
Diolch, Rhys. Peredur, ti eisiau chwanegu rhywbeth I hwnna? Do you want to add anything?
Yeah. From a seeker's point of view, and what I'd probably try and push is that planning and patience, maybe a couple of things I'm not very good at, is very, very important. So even if you might think that, so we'll start with the planning and the patience, well, both together really is, when you're planning, I think you should allow for, well, to start with, I think you need a long enough agreement for things to develop and and change, because everything's new. But I think if as seekers, if you're keen enough and you want it enough, you'll have a planning stage where you allow maybe that there might not be enough money to take out of the business to start off with, and you may have to work another second job, the third job. But if you're passionate enough about it, it's important that you're willing to have that transition period where there's 1 or 2 years that you may have planned for in the agreement to start off with. Here at the moment, we're building stock numbers and trying to produce a profit, but I'm quite aware that for me to live and for the landowner to live, we've both got to be patient in the way that if we want to take money out, or whether the money that we could take out, we'd reinvest into the farm for more stock. So there's a lot of different ways, but patience is very important. And I'd say as well, for seekers, maybe looking at these opportunities and thinking, well, maybe they're not big enough. But again, I think it's quite key. The name of this webinar tonight is how to get on the ladder. Well, I look at it in terms of buying a house. Maybe the first opportunity you take might not be the opportunity you want to be involved in 20 or 30 years time, but it's important to start off somewhere. And whether you can start off in a share farming agreement where it's 2-3 days a week and you work whichever way you want to bring another revenue for yourself to start off with. But I think taking that first step, even if it's not the perfect scenario that you wish you could walk into, I think it's crucial that you take a chance on it to start off with and make it work. And like Rhys said, yes, it has to make money, but I think in that planning period, say you make an agreement for 5 to 10 years, year one, you allow for minimal profit to be made because you're adjusting, you're changing things, you're getting to know this new farm, and it's a hell of a lot of change. And then, but having a planned year 3-4 approach where you have to make money by, and then that's the point then that you may have to start looking elsewhere if it's not going to work.
Good. Yeah, can I just add to that, Einir? That's been very, an excellent point by Peredur, really. As I mentioned in my long and short-term goals, really, my short-term goals really was to make the system first of all profitable, and that's taken us now. We're in the 4th year, really, and it does take time. Usually these opportunities come up on beef and sheep farms, and it's no secret, really. It's because if the system was profitable, the original system there was profitable, they wouldn't be seeking to go to a venture, really, because there's a problem there to begin with usually. Okay, so therefore it does take time. You can't turn around the business in a year, really. No business can sort of establish and then be profitable straight away. You're very, very, very lucky. It's very challenging. So therefore it takes time. And especially with beef and sheep farms, it's the resource there available that's been probably depleted over years. You've got low pHs, low P's and K's, so it does take some investment. So it's very key, really, that anybody thinking of joining such an enterprise, really, or such a venture, has sort of an agreement, as Peredur says, that for 4 or 5 years, that to be taken into account that farm maybe needs to be sort of improved, and there needs to be some sort of an agreement there, because there's no expectancy that it can be as predictive as you want from day one, really. So it's got to be a transition period, and you've got to be there for the long run, really, in these sort of ventures. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of work that the three of us in Coed Coch have put in, really, time and work, maybe above and beyond, really, to get to this stage. But it's, we're passionate about it, and you can get there with hard work.
Yeah, great. Diolch Pedyr a Rhys, thank you. Yes, definitely. It's not going to be something that's going to happen overnight, and that's a message that we repeat quite a lot, really, with the seekers that we work with. So thank you very much for answering that for us. We've got a lot of questions that have come in. I'll see whether there's one that we Oh, this is an interesting one. So somebody's asking whether it's worth investing time in getting a uni degree before setting out looking for a joint venture as a young entrant. So who wants to answer that one? Emyr?
Yeah, if I knew now, I guess, when I knew 10 years ago when I went to Aberystwyth, I don't know. It is important. You've got to keep your options open, and having a degree, I guess, in a way, even if you do step away from farming day to day, you've got a degree to fall back on. But I would say probably the more important thing is just getting experience. Putting yourself out there. I went to New Zealand straight after uni. I was only planning to be there for 3-4 months, ended up staying just under 2 years. But I really think that time there shaped me. I saw new things. I think I came back sort of more focused on what I wanted to achieve. And yeah, I definitely wouldn't say you need a degree to be a share farmer. Definitely not. There's some fantastic opportunities. If you want to get into dairy farming, there's a very, very clear path that you can climb up, starting from a general herdsperson up to their manager, and then there's just so many progressive steps then through from manager to share farmer to contract farming, and then could eventually lead up into farm ownership. So I think, yeah, no, don't get bogged down with the idea you need to go to uni.
Diolch Emyr. Pedyr, ti eisiau dod fewn hwnna?
Yeah, I would agree with Emyr. The key thing, I'd say, we tend to always tell people I went to university, same as Emyr, and I was fortunate enough to go to, again, New Zealand, like a lot of people, as part of my university course, but I'd quite confidently say that I've learned a hell of a lot more during my placement year and everything I've learned since graduating university than I did during university, but that might just be me. The only thing, like Emyr did mention, is having that degree gives you that backstop and gives you that something to rely on whether other things don't pan out. So personally, if I was to ask myself now, would I do it again? I still would go back to university. It's a lot to do with the people you meet, and it's a good laugh as well. But but having that degree does give you a really good foundation to build. It's farming is difficult, and it's difficult to make money, and sometimes, because I left university, went to work for Dumbia, the red meat processor, for 2 years, and I did learn a heck of a lot there, and it was never something I'd want to do for the long run, but it was so invaluable with the people I was meeting there, which then led to the opportunity where we are here. So do you need it? No. Is it a safer option to have it? I'd say yes, but again, like Emma said, it is. A lot of people don't like to hear this, but it is the people you know that gets you to the door, but it's the things you know that gets you through it. So university is not, it's not crucial, but I think it's a safe option, and learning as much, going to work in just the most random, different, if you've got no interest in whether you in a farming enterprise, it's still good to go and learn. And I remember someone telling me once that even if you learn how not to do something, it's still it's still a good thing to learn. So I know it's not very clear what I'm saying is, but would I go to uni again? Yes. Is it crucial to no?
Diolch, Brydyr. Next question, I think this one might be for Nerys, but everybody else feel free to chip in if you want. So with share farming, at the end of the contract, what would the non-landowner walk away with? Would it just be financial benefit rather than an opportunity to become landowners?
It depends on the share farming enterprise that's been set up. So at the end of the contract, yes, they walk away with the financial benefit they've had over the period of time of the share farming enterprise, isn't it? In terms of their share of that profit within that enterprise. But in addition to that, in some share farming enterprises, there are provisions for livestock, for example, to be acquired over time within that share farming business. So that's quite common. And sometimes somebody who's a share farmer chooses to invest their profit in livestock. Something which Brydyr was mentioning earlier, isn't it? As a way of creating equity themselves, so that by the time they get to the end of the share farming business, they have that equity or that livestock or maybe equipment as well that they've got to perhaps go on to the next opportunity that they go into. So it depends very much on the enterprise, on what the terms of that enterprise are. It's also possible to create options for a share farmer to purchase an interest in another business as well. So there's other options like that can be written into contracts if that's something you want to include as an incentive at the end of a share farming contract, or even during that enterprise.
Can I interrupt as well, Einir? Because I've got a sort of this is one thing I told myself I must say tonight on this, but probably this is the chance for it really on contracts and the question related to when a contract finishes. One thing that I was told at the very beginning, really, by Darwin Finch actually, was the contracts are essential, but if you've got a good working relationship with the partners, that can be sort of you can work around things. But what's absolutely key for a contract is that there is a sort of an exit strategy, not a strategy or an exit agreement, really. That it's everything's fine when everything's going fine, but you must put in the scenario really that things will go pear-shaped. They could go pear-shaped, and what happens if that happens, really? So you've got to protect your assets and to protect your investments, really. You've got to have something in place so you know exactly where you stand if things don't work out, really. Yeah. And there was another interesting thing that David told me about contracts as well, is that they're essential, but he was saying as well that the day you get that contract out of the office drawer, really, and you tell them, oh yes, you said this and I said that, well, that relationship is pretty in sort of troubled waters, really. So yeah, good.
Diolch, Rhys. So we hear a lot about, I've heard you've mentioned it before, Rhys, you've said it as well, Emyr. We hear a lot about people saying that you've got to have skin in the game. Who can tell us a bit more about that and how it has a positive impact on the dynamics of a joint venture?
Yeah, so with me in Pentref with the heifer rearing unit, when I first met the owner of the heifer rearing unit is David Finch, and he was quite keen from the onset for me to be able to have my own stock there, and being that we were in the business of rearing heifers, the opportunity for me was to be able to buy sort of surplus heifers from the farm, which is Cymamlwch, where we rear the heifers for. So I could buy heifers from there, run them alongside the heifers that I was taking care of day in, day out. I would pay the same fee for the heifers, regardless, even though I was there doing the work. And then I've done that, and this month now those heifers are in calf, and I'm selling them on. So the skin in the game element for me there was massive, because I was very lucky. There was space for these heifers to be there to run alongside the other enterprise. And I was there. I was doing the work every day, so I didn't actually have to go out of my way to kind of look after them. And it also gave me a good focus. Even though I'm taking care of other people's stock, I think you should always bear in mind, you just treat stock as if they are completely yours as well, and you just treat them as you would want your stock to be treated. So then if you've got your own heifers there, you're going to go that extra 10%, 20% each day to make sure that everything is done properly, and the livestock are thriving. So having skin in the game, it's just a really big carrot to dangle in front of someone, and a great incentive to make sure that everyone's on board and is enjoying the job, basically.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree. It is key. It is key for any joint venture, really, and because it's a joint thing, and you're all in it together, really, and having your skin in as well, it makes it a team. There's no him and us. You're a team, and having everybody with having everybody with financial interest involved makes everybody really as committed and as how can you say, committed,
exposed, I think,
as each other, really. Yes. So it's also that it also makes it's very key, I think, for the youngster coming up, or somebody who wants to build assets, that they are able to build that asset as well, and to increase that skin in the game as well, to incentivize them, really, and to make them get up in the morning to come out and to sort of a real incentive, really, and it's what makes it work, really.
Can I
Peredur?
Okay.
Oh, no, well, yeah, thank you. Slightly different in terms of the way we started here was, quite honestly, we for the first year we were finding our feet and working out how everything was going to go, and then we found out pretty quickly, or knew already, really, that we were fairly understocked, and that was then giving me the potential to like the eminent chiefs have said, of building equity or getting skin in the game. But to be quite honest, to start off with, I didn't have the finances to do that to start off with. And in terms of skin in the game, I don't actually think you need to own stock as such, because you should have enough drive, because you're aiming at a profit share. So regardless if you own the stock or not, you still need the most out of them, and for them to be treated as well as you possibly can, for both parties to come out of that year, or the second year or whatever, to start off with profitably. But again, I think it's a very good point of being allowed to grow. Fortunately, here we were understocked, and now I've just bought some ewes that are arriving on Wednesday, and that's given me now my start of an equity pot to start here. But in terms of needing it, I don't think it's crucial, but the crucial aspect is to be able to build it within that business. And I've been fairly lucky, maybe buying stock from the landowner is a little bit more difficult, but because we're expanding and I'm buying used to help expand the business, it's quite easy. But I think it is crucial that you're allowed to grow and expand your equity if if you want to, that is. But I wouldn't say it's crucial, and definitely not to start off with, because I'll be quite honest, I could never afford to rent a farm like this and then stock it. It's just, I wouldn't be here. You could never do it. And that's what the great thing is of share farming. Nerissa said it, everyone said it all along, is a lot of people have asked me, can you send us a template? Well, there is absolutely no template to it. The simple thing is to, you just value what both parties bring to the agreement. And that's kind of as complicated as you need to get in terms of whether you decide on a profit share or whatever. And as different things change within that agreement, then things can alter as you go. And the crucial thing is, I'm on a bit of a tangent, but the crucial thing we've got here is having quite a professional outlook on it, having weekly management meetings that do end up bi-weekly sometimes, and try to stick to a monthly financial meeting that can become a quarterly financial meeting again, but having a structure that everyone knows what they're doing and that everyone knows what the other one wants out of it weekly, because everything changes, is crucial as well.
Diolch, Breder. Great. Next question then, because we've got quite a lot of questions coming in and we're not going through them very quickly. Next one, I think this one's for Nerys. How does Subsidies work with a joint venture?
It depends on the joint venture, and essentially you can agree whatever you want within the joint venture as to who is in receipt of the subsidy. So to give you an example, in a share farming agreement, it could be that the landowner share farmer claims the BPS, isn't it, and the Glasted, if there's Glasted as well, and then there's a decision to be made as to whether or not the income from that BPS and Glasted goes into the pot for the purposes of being shared in terms of the profitability of that business, isn't it? And different people have different views on that, and everybody's circumstances are different, isn't it? So you can agree whatever works for you as a particular business, isn't it? In a contract farming business, again, it would be the landowner that would claim in that instance, isn't it? But you could still agree that the contractor gets a percentage of that if you wanted to, isn't it? If that was what you wanted to agree, but in normal circumstances it would be the contractor. I should say as well, the share farmer, the non-landowning share farmer, can also be the BPS claimant if that's how you want it to be set up. So there's different ways you can do it, isn't it, depending on your agreement and where you want that income, if you like, to be received, and then you need a decision as to whether or not that is shared, and if so, by in what percentages.
So I'll just explain to you our situation, if you want, Einir, so just as an example, really. Exactly as Nerys said, really, it's up to us where it goes, really, but obviously it's the landowner who gets it first. But we've sort of agreed, going back to my point, really, earlier point about the need for farms to be set up to be profitable to begin with. So there was a need in Coed Coch to really improve the pHs and the Ps and Ks. So therefore we've got an agreement with the landowner that the proportion of that single farm payment is invested in soil fertility for the first 5 years. Now that 5 years is coming to an end now. So we're continually soil testing, really. So and there's still an agreement, really, that we need to get to a certain place on pH and Ps and Ks on the farm. So until we get there, we've got an agreement, and it's a fluid agreement that we discuss every year. How much that is invested from that single farm payment into the farm to make it a resource that can be a profitable resource for us to use as a farming business.
Diolch, Rhys. Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on its head there, really. If we look at the bigger picture, our overall goal for all of us, I would hope, is to be able to run our businesses without that subsidy anyway, isn't it? But I appreciate that it's a popular question and people want to know the answer to it. But thank you very much for that. We have another question. Somebody's looking for a few tips on getting your name out as a seeker. How do you know when you're ready and if it's the right venture, etc. Who wants to have a go on that one? Emyr?
Trying to think how this all happened. I think, yeah, before starting in Pentro, I was, we were farming in partnership with my mum and dad, beef and sheep at the time at home, and we wanted to grow. So we were always on the lookout really for, I don't know, bit of land here and there and so on. And I got more to the point where I felt I wanted to have, for whatever land we were taking on, to be sort of mine in a way, for me to have my own stamp on it. So that turned into more like share farming, looking for share farming opportunities. Went to look at a few tenancies, short-term tenancies, longer-term tenancies. None of them worked, or none of them came to anything. And I remember I bumped into Rhys Williams, who was in partnership with Darwin and Finch, and I just asked him the question, why isn't this working, or why are sort of the land agents looking at me daft, basically, for suggesting why couldn't it be done through a share farming agreement. So it was just, I think through that conversation, that's when I had the opportunity to go to Pentro. So you never know where these opportunities are going to come from. So just talk. You've got to put yourself out there, even though it feels very uncomfortable at times. You do have to actually put yourself out there for things to happen. And yeah, just don't be afraid of that. And yeah, go from there. Talk, definitely.
Diolch, Emyr. Yeah, I'll just I'll add to that if you don't mind. Just be aware of the venture program, of course.
Oh yeah. Sorry, yeah.
I've done a quick search on the person that actually asked that question, and I can't find you on the venture database. So that would be my first tip for you, is to join venture as a seeker. So the way the program works is you would complete a profile, which is basically as a bit of a CV. We would share with you the opportunities that we've got currently advertised. You would express an interest in those, and we go from there. Really, we exchange contact details if both parties are happy to do so, and we would provide mentoring and help facilitate those initial discussions. Then it might be a good chance for me to just mention some of the opportunities that we have got at the moment. We've currently got 11 opportunities being advertised. 9 of them, actually, going back to our discussions earlier about the beef and sheep sector, 9 of those opportunities that we've got are actually beef and sheep. We've got, just to pick out a few of the main ones, we've got a 250-acre opportunity near Aberystwyth. That's up for grabs. There's 120 acres in Anglesey, 150 acres in Cardigan, and another 150 acres in Llandyfri as well. On the dairy front, then, we've got 2 opportunities at the moment. One of them is in Caerphilly. That is 600 acres, a dairy unit there. And we've got a similar sized one, about 500 acres in Tregaron as well. That's currently up for grabs. So there's a lot of opportunities there, and it's, they're there to be taken, really, on the venture program. So my tip for you, who asked that question, was certainly to get your name on the venture program to start off with. Yeah, Prydydd?
Quickly, can I just really quickly, in terms of if you're ready, or when should you start thinking about it? Well, yesterday. Just go for it. And then in terms of being quite blunt about it, in terms of how do you know you're ready, you'll know you're ready. You're ready whenever, and even if you go for a few of them and you don't get any luck with being successful, the key thing is ask for feedback, whether that's from Einir at Farming Connect, or you can speak to, if she can ask the provider in that instance why you weren't quite suitable, well, that's the best way you can ever learn, is to actually go through those hard yards. I failed a lot of times in a few different ways, but as long as you learn from it, you got nothing to lose. I'd say if you've ever thought about doing it, do it tonight after this finishes. Get your profile up there, and like Emma said, it's very similar to me here. It can be just such a random conversation with a person that you've got no intention of it coming to anything, but even different Farming Connect meetings and such as that is speaking to as many people as you possibly can. And even if you fail for the first 100 times, you might get it on the 101st time. So it's just all about learning and just trying.
And I think I'd also say, I don't know if just the kind of what people are looking for, but you know, you've really got to look at opportunities in a very open mind. You know, the farm might not be a model farm. You know, it might need quite a bit of work doing to it, and and so on. But you know, that's really a good opportunity, because that farm might be a place that someone else will not even consider. So that's maybe a foot in the door there. So yeah, you know, everyone would like a model farm. I get it, and yeah, we can all dream. It's a good place to set your goals for. But you know, you've really got to start somewhere. Like Peter said, just do something, and go from there, and work your way up.
I think, can I just add one more thing, Einir?
Yeah, of course.
I think the other thing as well is, you know, we're talking very much about the provider providing the opportunity, but actually the seeker is also providing an opportunity. And I can see some of the kind of the questions being put about somebody looking to go into horticulture and pigs and things like that. I mean, if you've got an idea, you are presenting an opportunity to a provider the provider may not even have thought about yet. So I think it's really important to think of yourself not as, you know, when you're a seeker, as somebody providing an opportunity as well, and it's not just the other way around. I think that's very important message.
Excellent. Excellent. And can I put my 2 pence worth in for that as well, Einir? Because I think it's because I sort of foresaw seeing this question about advice to seekers, and you know, just to hook on what Nerys is saying. Really, I wrote down really just a few things really what I would advise, and that they include sort of research profitable business models, consider what you could bring to that business, create a business plan, surround yourself with positive people, approach prospective partners. You know, you don't ask, you don't get. You know, opportunities very, very rarely land on your lap. You need to go looking for them, and you need to be confident, and you know, you need to know your numbers, and that's what would give a sort of somebody wanting to go into business with you more confidence, really, if you know your numbers and you're confident and you're certain what you want, really. So yeah, so those are my few little bits of advice.
Great, Jeffries. Thanks, Nerys, for picking up. Somebody did ask on the question here. We've got some questions. People looking to go into pig farming and horticulture as well. So my advice would be to get on the venture programme to see what opportunities are out there. Now, I know we've sort of been discussing this evening, possibly more from the sort of seeker's perspective. But you raised a really good point there, I think, Nerys, on the in terms of the seekers providing an opportunity as well. But I think from the provider's point of view, you know, we talked a bit earlier about beef and sheep farms maybe not profitable at the moment, but I think there's a role to play from the provider's point of view, that they could maybe adapt their business as well. That may be looking for a seeker to come in to run their beef and sheep farm, but actually that farm might be a suitable pig farm or a different sector altogether. So there's a need to adapt really for both parties, whether you're coming into the industry or providing an opportunity for somebody. And on that point as well, you know, we talk about communication being absolutely key for any joint venture. and it's a strong message from us as the venture team. But it can be easier said than done, communication, especially when there's generational differences between the business partners. So has any of you got any tips on that? Whether you could you share any tips on that when you've got to sort of evolve your communication methods when you're dealing with your business partner?
Yeah, I'll have a go if you want, Einir, first. Yeah, it is, as you mentioned, sort of communication is key, really, but it's all down to, again, as I mentioned, these sort of aligned goals. You've got to know what each other wants out of the partnership, and that's got to be sort of reminded at times, really, and you've got to be having that sort of relationship of being sympathetic to each other's needs, sort of takes away the risk of any friction. So knowing what everybody wants out of the partnership is really, really key, really, and being sympathetic to their needs. To be in a successful joint venture, in my mind anyway, you need really good people skills, and you've got to be a people's person. It will not work if you're going to fall out. It just will. Falling out, it must not happen. It does not happen, and you can be very, very mature, business minded, and you cannot fall out. And we're very, very fortunate. I was talking about this to Harry and Emir when we had a meeting last month. That it's almost 5 years now, and we've never fallen out. We've disagreed on a lot of things. You've got to be professional, very, very professional, and do not fall out. So you've got to be sort of a people manager. You've got to be good people skills and a people's person to be involved in this sort of venture. But sort of general communication, sort of day to day, because I'm only there once a month. I use obviously these WhatsApp groups between the three of us. So it's generally I don't speak to Emir. Maybe I only speak to him maybe 2 or 3 times a week. But I'm almost every day really. I'm on with Harry and him on the WhatsApp chat. So regular communication, a lot of things. But also Peredur mentioned earlier about their meetings. It's got to. It's key really. We've got it sounds a bit posh, but we call them board meetings. But it's a board meeting. We're a company, a limited company, and companies have board meetings. So it's a monthly board meeting with an agenda. That's chaired, that's minuted. So everything really that's bugging anybody or anybody who's got any worries, anything, could get off their chest in that meeting really, and it's done then. So there is no niggly things, underlying things that can get people upset or can cause friction. It's sorted. So it's being professional really, and communicating well and being mature about it really. That's my messages.
Yeah, I'd like to second a lot of what Lisa just said really, because in terms of communication and even the generational gap, I think a lot of it is just having perspective. If I just think that, well, whatever I want to do should be done and that's the end of it, well, you've got to have a perspective of the person that you're working with as well. And if you can have perspective, it is crucial. There's no other way about it. It's crucial. And I'd say in terms of having a streamline, like Sri said, you can disagree, but I'd say the root of most arguments is one party worrying anyway. So if you can communicate enough that anyone can air their worries quickly enough before it turns into an argument, that's the crucial part. Myself and Karine, who we farm here, who's the farm owner, is we talk every day in terms of, we do talk every day, whether it's over text, phone call, in the yard, whatever happens, we talk every day about most things. And again, it's good to have a sit down meeting. It is only ever planned to be 20 or 30 minutes, but it's normally always an hour, because you discover you've got more things to talk about than you thought you did. And then you can air any worries that someone might have, and you can plan ahead for the week or the next 2 weeks. So talking on the yard or whatever is important, but having that formal, we're not quite we're not quite as formal as Rhys. We don't quite have board meetings, but we do keep minutes, and it's crucial just to remember. We all forget, and we both have a copy of the minutes, so you can just refer back to it if you need to. But making time to sit down, and I remember speaking to my friends about this. Yeah, it might be a little bit weird if you're speaking to your dad and trying to make it into a meeting, or your parents, or however it is, but allowing time, whether you're even only on a family partnership, allowing time, 20 minutes, half an hour a week, to actually sit down properly and make time for it. It's not good enough to say that you're too busy. Make time for it and have a really quite professional discussion, communication, and it makes everything a heck of a lot easier.
Diolch, Brydydd. I think that's a really good point that you just touched on there with family members and being involved, being in business with family members. And maybe we can bring you in there, Nerys. People maybe don't consider joint venture as being a solution for succession within a family sometimes. Can you talk a bit about that and how it can maybe work?
Yeah, no, we can do joint ventures within families or farming families. So we've utilised share farming, contract farming as well, where perhaps a partnership isn't appropriate, isn't it? Although sometimes partnerships are the best way to do it. Or we touched a lot tonight about risk, isn't it? Things like that. And Rhys mentioned limited companies. So there's quite a few people looking at limited companies or LLPs because of risk as well, and doing their joint venture like that, isn't it? So I think just because you're related doesn't mean you can't utilise joint ventures wherever you are on that wheel or spectrum of different types of joint ventures that are available to facilitate you in terms of that succession. Because as Einir have heard me say before, succession isn't necessarily about what happens when you die. It's about what happens between now and when you die, isn't it? And you have to build in that succession plan in terms of your business as well as what's happening perhaps in terms of your assets, isn't it? So it is actually a very useful tool. So don't rule out share farming just because you're related to one another. It can actually be quite a useful option or tool from that point of view as well.
Diolch, Nerys. We've got another couple of questions here before we close for the evening. We've touched a bit on this already. Would it be a struggle with providers if the seeker doesn't have much money or stock?
Yeah, no, I'll take that one to start then. No, I wouldn't say so, because you can, things can change. You can maybe start off just being a general farm worker for the provider, and things could evolve there. But for me, I started off with the contract farming company. I started a limited company myself with pretty much nothing really, and then just fortunate that the provider knew my situation, and we just came to we worked things out. Made good budgets at the start, and we were all very clear with what I needed to bring to the party and what he could bring. And I mean, this is a very people talk about sort of opportunities, and I always think when my older brothers were younger, the good opportunity for them to make money was when they were buying houses, selling houses with the uplift in value, and that was their sort of big time then. But for us now, I think money at the moment is very, very cheap to borrow, and I'm not that I'm trying to tell people to get into masses of debt, but that can be a friend as well. And it's only a borrowing until you can't pay it back, then it's a debt, is advice I had once. So don't be afraid to borrow, and I think if you are going to borrow on the right things that are going to make a massive impact to the business. You don't need all these fancy tractors and all this and that. Just simple equipment that can get you things that are going to help your grassland management, and just make your life a little bit easier. So yeah, don't worry if you haven't got massive money to go into a share farming agreement.
If I was a
Valuable advice.
Yeah.
Sorry,
if I was a provider, I wouldn't. What somebody brings in assets or money would be the sort of the least of my worry. It's
definitely.
People, it's a people thing, as I mentioned before, really, and it's the people that you're growing. You're growing people, really, and it's that. As a provider, I'd be looking for the potential in somebody. Somebody who's hardworking, honest, got some good ideas and some energy about them, and willing to learn and to develop. And that's the sort of traits that I'd be looking at for. It's the person that you're investing in, not wanting to take their, use their money or their assets at all, really. And if it's if it's a provider that is only looking for your sort of your financial interests, really, they're not probably the provider for you, really.
With Koch, I think it's amazing what you guys achieve. 2,500 ewes with absolutely minimal machinery, isn't it? And I think things have to be like that. So keep, like I said, people is the most important thing, isn't it? And trust in that.
If I just add quickly, just fairly similar again. When I started here, like Emyr, really, I didn't think that I brought much. I brought a few dogs that probably weren't great anyway, but I think we all need to value our own expertise, and what with that carries its own value in itself, whether it's not not financial. And I think a few people, we've all said it a little bit, the key thing that will make or break any agreement is trust. And if trust is everything we're talking, getting quite in depth about how different things works. Anything can work, but you need trust. If you haven't got any trust, you can't, in either way, it just won't work. So trust is absolutely crucial. And it doesn't matter the key thing I would say is if you don't bring a flock of 100 sheep or whatever some people might have, but you have got a blank canvas that you can mold yourself and the new business to whatever you'd like. And all it means is that you've got maybe a little bit more flexibility, but the only thing that you need to bring is dedication, hard work, and trust. That trust is, I'd say if you only remember one thing tonight, it would be that trust aspect.
Diolch, Brydydd. Thanks. So really important message there in terms of people and appreciating what you bring to the table. A couple of people have asked how you develop your profile. So you can submit a profile through the Family Connect website, and from there, if that starts the process, then really we can help you to develop your profile further. We can sort of mentor you to identify skills gaps that we might think that you've got in your profile, and maybe talk to you a bit more about the experiences that you've got and whether you're sort of you're explaining them properly in your profile to make sure that you're advertising yourself as a seeker as effective as you possibly can. We've still got some questions to go through, but I'm conscious of time. Some of them are actually quite specific to you're asking about quite specific questions about specific scenarios or different businesses. So my advice to you guys who are asking those questions about the pig sector and horticulture sector is to join the venture scheme, and we can start the conversation. Really, we can get some more tailored advice to you. We offer one-to-one surgeries as part of the programme, where you would be able to have a one-to-one confidential consultation with a business consultant or a solicitor. So they could go through with you the different business models that you're asking about. That's the key message from me, really, is to join the programme, so you can find out more about the opportunities that we've got being advertised at the moment. Has anybody else have you got anything to add, any of the panel before we close for the evening?
Perhaps if somebody's thinking about a new venture and they're not quite sure, there's the Mentro mentoring program available for Farming Connect as well. So, you know, if you want a chance to spend more time speaking to people like Emyr, Rhys and Peredur, isn't it, about what they've done in terms of joint ventures, then there are opportunities to get a mentor as well to perhaps help you throughout this process, if you're still unsure or feeling your way through it as well.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Yeah, I'd just say quickly, if anyone does have specific questions that they'd want to ask, well, myself or anyone, if they'd want to ask you and you can forward us that question, I'd be quite happy to try and answer it at least.
Definitely.
Yeah, second that.
Great. Fab. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Great. Well, thank you to everybody who submitted questions. I hope you've gained something from our discussion tonight. It's been really, really good chatting to you. Yeah, thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you next time.